اومدید همتون گرامی. من شهریار افشار هستم، میزبان شما در پالیتیکس 365. امروز یک پولیتیکال اکتیویست در واشنگتن دی سی به برنامه دعوت کردیم، بیژن نکویی. بیژن یک اکتیویست در چند تا زمینه فعالیت کرده و واقعا عضو یه نسلیه که در این جنبش ملی و سراسر دنیا نقش خیلی مهمی رو بازی میکنه. ایشون تو چند تا پولیتیکال کمپین شرکت کرده و می‌خواستیم دعوتش کنیم بیژن و تا اونجا که میتونیم یاد بگیریم که چجوری میتونیم ایرانی‌ها رو تقویت کنیم، حمایت کنیم در کمپین‌های سیاسی آمریکا در هر بخشی، شهرداری، استان، فدرال، کاندیدسی، کنگره. چجوری میتونیم به ایرانی‌ها کمک کنیم، راهنمایی کنیم که در هر کمپینی که میخوان در این کشور آمریکا موفق بشن. بقیه برنامه به انگلیسیه، پس بریم دنبال گفتگومون. بیژن, welcome to Politics 365. So great to have you here. I've been excited to speak with you. I love having, I'm going to call you the next generation because I feel like I'm part of the older generation now, but the next generation of Iranian Americans active in US political affairs. So important. We've been here for 45 years as a community, and I think we all feel we all could have done better. We all could be a lot more politically active. And you've been involved with various political campaigns. I just feel like your lessons learned are so important. Before we get into the, how to invite and encourage Iranians to get involved with U.S. political campaigns, tell us a little bit about your background, your education, how many languages you speak. I thought Mandarin was really cool, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me. And I was very excited to join you today and chat a little bit about this. It's an issue that I think is really important. General political activism, getting involved in our system is really where we draw all of our strength. And so I was really looking forward to having this conversation today. So thank you so much for making the time. Bijan Nekoie, I've been a political strategist and a government consultant now for, my gosh, well over a decade. I'm based here in DC and originally from Portland, Maine. And over the cornerstone of my career, I've had the opportunity to work with all levels of government, from folks here at the agency level, all across the federal government, to candidates across the nation, running for office at various levels, and then also helping with ballot initiatives and different local community causes. I've been politically focused and government focused, public policy focused for most of my career. And I've been very lucky to work with, a spectrum of folks who come from different backgrounds, who just want to do good by their community, and I want to be able to empower them. And so that's kind of the lens in which I come to my work. I am from, a family, I am first generation. So my mother was originally born in Boston, my father Tehran. And so my perspective growing up, as you say, the next generation, I think, is an important one. And I think the more voices that we have in this conversation, the better. And we welcome that. And I think that's something that is worth fighting for. So thank you so much for the time. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Bijan. So, when I feel like Iranian Americans, being one of them, all these years I've been in this country, it feels like, first Iranians have to get over their, suspicion of politicians, right? Politicians in general don't have a good reputation either in this country and worst of all in Iran. So we don't come from a history of participatory democracy. We don't come from a history and culture of political activism. Any political activist that most Iranians know has gotten shot or hung or arrested, it just doesn't pay to be politically active, at least in our cultural understanding. But of course, many of us, and there's a wide degree of perceptions here, whether you're a Democrat or Republican doesn't really matter. This conversation is agnostic in that way. It doesn't matter. We're not trying to promote one political party over another. We're trying to promote political activism. Of course, after 45 years, we've observed other minorities in this country have massively more influence in the US political system. I'm talking federal, local, state, every level, than we have. Of course, we've also seen people running for office and being successful, Iranian Americans, second, third generation, maybe even, first generation. They've gone to city councils. I don't think we've ever had an Iranian governor, but many people in high-level appointment positions in state level government. It's a lot of them in California, of course, a lot of them across the country. No, we don't really. I don't think we've had any congressional candidates. But what I'm saying is, I feel like we're getting over our fear of getting involved in politics if we are able to. But how would you encourage a potential candidate from getting involved? Do you have to start at a city council and then move to Congress, or how would you involve someone interested in public service get organized and move forward?
Absolutely. Well, it first starts by listening to this podcast. That's the first step that you can do.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. Yeah.
The first step is making sure that you listen to this podcast here. No, and so I think it's tremendously important, and it starts in all seriousness. I think it starts with having conversations like this and broadening the aperture to more folks across this country and building a bigger audience, right? So I think it's as simple as starting the conversation, I think. And, once we can start the conversation, we can sort of build off there. It's been said, and ideas been put out there, and we can go about and start to create some action. So I think, put simply, I think it first starts with having the conversation and saying, look, we want to build more political power, make sure more voices are represented in the conversation. And so it starts here. But the second piece about getting involved is the beautiful thing about the American system, for all of the news that we see, just in these days it's quick, and there's a lot to cover and a lot to follow. You have the power, right? The beautiful thing about the system is the power rests in the individual, and collectively with cooperation, hopefully we can get things done. The environment seems a little bit more complex these days, but don't let that discourage you. I think in the end, the individual has tremendous influence and tremendous power in this country, and you do have the ability to sort of change the environment around you. One thing that's really important is to not get sort of lost in the noise, and just remember that we can get into this for the right reason. So if you're living in a community, I'll use mine. I'm from Portland, Maine originally. If I saw an issue with rising tides, or a local issue with the roads or zoning or growth and development, I mean, you have forums available to you that are open to the public. And there's nothing stopping you from being able to run for office, run for sheriff if you need to, county executive. I mean, these positions are there and oftentimes go unfilled or unchallenged. And so the strength of our system depends on that participation. And so the barrier is very low to getting involved. In other words, the system is there, those positions are open and available. And so it's just a matter of filling out what is a fairly straightforward paperwork, and then getting involved. And so I would encourage your listeners to do that. If you're thinking about solving an issue in your community, you can go on down to City Hall and file your paperwork, and get involved, and then your voice is part of the discussion. I don't necessarily think, though, that enacting change across this country needs to be done necessarily at the presidential level. Well, that is great, and it's great to aspire to that, and a whole lot of things can get done if you decide to run for president. But this country is made up of a series of changes and a series of policies, right? And they all kind of connect together and form into the federal government in one way or another. And so even doing good by your community, whether you're on a school board, in our case in Portland, Maine, we had a charter commission election in the past couple of years, which is essentially to review our city's constitution. Unpaid. It was for a short term, but you're essentially reviewing a document and rewriting the rules of the city. Now that is tremendously impactful, not just to your community in the short term, but it will leave a lasting impact for many decades to come. And so it's something small like that. Sure, you'll need to learn how to run a campaign and speak with your neighbors and learn how to disagree, politely and disagree with insight. But the process is there, and it's just looking for folks who are brave enough and who are motivated enough to get involved. But the system is as powerful as it is because of ordinary people wanting to get involved. And so, I think aim for the stars. Like, sure, if Congress is your goal, certainly gaining some of that experience is tremendously valuable in understanding how our legislative processes work. But you don't necessarily need to become president to move mountains.
Right. No, thank you for mentioning all those points, especially starting at the local level. Many offices, political offices, go unchallenged. Your county registrar of voters typically has a list, whichever county you live in. You can see what elections are coming up and what offices. School boards are a great way to kind of get your feet wet, as they say, get some experience, learn how to be on a governing side of things. I think that's and you don't have to move anywhere, right? It's like where you live and maybe your kids are in school. Definitely a school board is a great place to start. Water boards, being on water authorities, all these local planning jurisdictions. And then, Congress, interesting thing about Congress is you don't have to live in that district to run for that district, which is really odd to me. But and when I look at the gerrymandering that has gone on, and this is, I don't even know how to translate gerrymandering in Farsi, by the way, but basically, you would think that congressional districts are created with some logic based on geography and culture or society or economics, but as a matter of fact, they're not. They're created at the state level by state legislators. And if your legislator is Republican or Democrat, then at whatever point in time they're able to redraw the map, they can draw a very crazy looking map to favor a Democratic or Republican majority. So if I always tell people, if you've never done it, go look at the congressional districts of your county or wherever you live. You'll be shocked at what it looks like. It literally makes no sense. It's the craziest thing in American politics I've ever seen. But if you get over that and you do want to run, and the reason I think people are interested in Congress is that they deal with foreign affairs, or they're part of the review oversight body. Not the administration sets foreign policy, but Congress has oversight authority and funding ability for various foreign adventures, good or bad. So I think people have a sense that I could be more relevant as a immigrant in those forums. But you don't have to, like you said, you can start small.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the party system. I've never been a big fan I've had a lot of experience with the Democratic organizations. I've worked with Republicans. I'm agnostic when it comes to political activism. I just want Iranians to get involved and vote and register and run for office, and whatever their policies are, we can debate that later. But if you want to run for office, do you have to kind of declare yourself Democrat or Republican and then work through their funding and vetting systems? How does that work?
Yeah, no, well, I think that's on your mind, and I'm sure that's probably on the minds of millions of other Americans who, in looking at the congressional approval rating right now, I mean, Congress as a whole, as a body, the approval rating is sort of has been down recently and has been down for a long time, and so I think we're probably at this point in our history where we're really evaluating what it means to be associated with a party, and perhaps many of us just coming to understand what it means to exist within a party where you have a spectrum of beliefs and different sets of political power, and there's different incentives depending on where you fall in the political spectrum. And so, I think to understand, it's sort of like being part of any large organization. You're going to have different groups. And so do I think that in the modern age, do you have to become a part of a political party? I mean, no, not necessarily. I mean, the beauty of this country is like you don't have to become affiliated at all. In fact, if you look at the election this year, a lot of it just simply because of the razor thin margins, and you look at the way Congress breaks down with a slim majority, it's incentivizing, I think a lot of folks to consider becoming an independent, to sort of remove themselves from party politics altogether and sort of, make decisions based on themselves, maybe their family and their community without the lens that's sort of put upon them by a party. And these are folks from many different backgrounds, all across the country, regardless of where they live. Perhaps, people in your life, and I'm sure I do too, that are sort of reevaluating what it means to be a voter and how and what's important to them and how they base their decisions just because of the lightning fast nature of the news and just sort of the life that we've been living over the last couple of years. And so I think the point is that joining a political party sort of does have its benefits, right? There's history, access to resources, support where needed in terms of fundraising if you need that, or field organizers, you need some help knocking on doors, help with messaging, right? Help getting access to information and the right folks to sort of form your platform. I mean, there are certainly benefits to joining a party platform. But these days, even races at the local level, you just have to be very careful about your races, city council, school board, becoming nationalized. And I think there's a national lens that's being infused into a lot of races that we see and at levels of government and campaigns all across government. So I would really empower folks to sort of look inward and say, what's important to me, to really look across the spectrum, I would say, in both parties now. And there's a lot of folks that are joining sort of an independent movement. That's interesting, but it is your right, living in this country, to be able to do that. And it is your decision at the end of the day. And the beauty of that is nobody's going to stop you from making that decision. In fact, I'd be sitting here with you on this podcast, supporting your right to do that, and would fight to defend that, whether or not we're in the same party or not. And so I think that's a beautiful thing that's here in this country, and I would support that.
Yeah, it's tough. I think when you look at nationally, people may not realize this, but we're not necessarily all a majority Democrat or majority Republican. There's something like, I don't know, 37% Republican, 37% Democrat, and the rest are independent. And for a lot of national elections are decided by independents,
Right.
People that don't want to affiliate with one party or another, and they vote for whatever they want. And sometimes maybe there's a good Democratic candidate, sometimes there's a Republican candidate. Sometimes you pick the candidate that's the least worst option. Unfortunately, in politics. But this has been great. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I could, the other thing that's sort of interesting about the party politics, right? Like Americans, just to your point, our turnout, just given that we're in a presidential year now, our turnout hovers somewhere around 60%, even during a presidential year. And so I think, a lot of this is going to be driven, especially in the race that's currently happening right now, a lot of it will be driven, I think, by independents and folks that are unaffiliated with party politics in general. But the game is also about turnout. And so, it's about engaging folks, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum. It's about who's turning up at the polls, how many people are showing up, and regardless of how they're voting, are they showing up at all? And so I think the game is, if you're in party politics right now, how can we turn out and maximize our voters that we know to be true today, who are sympathetic to our side of the aisle? And if you're an independent, being able to engage folks in the same way, and just making sure that they go to the polls.
Fantastic. Bijan, Nekoie, thank you so much for your time. We've learned a lot. This is an election year, as you said. We're going to keep checking in with you. You're our man at Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway, as they say, with knowledge and insights that I think the rest of the Iranian community can benefit from. So hang in there. We will come back and check with you every now and then until we see how this election year goes. Thanks so much for joining us.
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
Thanks.